You are now listening to the Highlight Reel Builder for Authors, the Going North podcast. I'm your host, certified self-leadership trainer and author of the best-selling book, Stay the Course, Dom Brightman. And you're going to be getting some goodies today from the guest that's up next. And today on the Highlight Reel Builder for Authors, known as the Going North podcast, we got another super special, awesome human today, folks. Got another super special, awesome human for you today, folks, because we got LA, who is an a life advocate and accelerator who likes to leverage her innate gifts of writing and speaking to influence others to have a healthy sense of their self-worth and use that energy for purpose-driven actions that positively contribute to themselves and their communities. That's right, folks. So we got a super special, awesome human who likes to help others accelerate because she is also a mom of 4, and she also writes poetry, and she also has a super special, awesome book called Aladdin Carpets that was released this past January on Amazon.com that you can buy 99 copies of before, during, or after this interview today. And it doesn't even stop there, folks, because she's also a certified change practitioner, life coach, analyst, and image consultant. So let's give it up for the one, the only, JD herself, Miss Jenn Drakes. How you doing today, Jenn?
I am doing wonderful, Dom, and it's a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you for that introduction.
Oh, my pleasure indeed. That's usually the best part of the show before it goes south when we start talking about bananas.
Oh, well, if you talk about bananas, there might be a lot of silence on this side of the mic. There's
Uh,
many things I can speak about. I'm not sure bananas is it's the top one of them.
Hey, it's all good because I know folks are lying with bated breath, waiting, going bananas, waiting to find out what else I forgot about the intro. So, am I filling in the folks on any cavities I missed about the jubilant Jenn herself?
I actually think you covered it very well. I'm a mom of 4. I am passionate about people's self-worth, coming from a background where that was questioned or tainted at a very young age. I had to work my way back from that to redefine who I was and to understand where I placed in this vast thing called life. I'm also passionate about the fact that we only have one life and we must live it to the fullest and to the best. And that means striving to be the greatest that you can be with the skills that you have been naturally given. So I believe everyone was given a natural gift, and some given more than one. And it is our obligation to figure out what those gifts are and maximize the use of them for the betterment of ourselves and those around us. So those would be the pieces that you possibly missed.
Some natural gifts. So, the gifts that don't need wrapping paper, huh?
Absolutely. We all have them. We take them for granted because we do them without thinking. And for us, they're very easy to do. So then we take it for granted. But those are the gifts that we are supposed to use to advance ourselves. So, as in the work that I do, both, when I'm podcasting, when I'm writing, when I'm nurturing others, is I am always amazed at those that have gone down a path away from that natural gift. And hence you end up feeling unfulfilled. And I know what I am talking about because I was one of those that, even though what I did in the day job had semblances and pieces of the things that I love, ultimately it ended up being unfulfilling because I was not maximizing the use of those things. And so I had to pivot and recommit to myself and use those gifts in a much more fulsome way. And today I sit, before you, speaking with you, a much more fulfilled individual, going after the use of those gifts in a much bigger way.
That's what I'm talking about. Indeed, a much bigger way, indeed. And if I'm not mistaken, all that magical stuff, the book and everything else at the podcast you host, this all started about a good, what, 12, 13, 14 months ago and counting?
And yeah, April 27th will actually be a year of my podcast, and it's syndicated across most major platforms: iHeartRadio, Google, Amazon, Lip Sync, to name just a few. So the momentum has been, especially once I committed to really align with my purpose and drive it from that perspective, has the momentum has been unbelievable and continues to be. So very gratified about that. And I think the important message for the audience is anything, whether it's in my book, whether it's on my podcast, here speaking with you, I never ask anybody, or in a coaching session, I never ask anybody to do things that I myself have not done. And I'm very aware through my experiences, and lived experiences, as to what is needed to really stay focused and to move with acceleration.
Ah, yes, indeed. That acceleration, indeed. So you mentioned commitment, and that can be a hard thing for some people, especially when they go into the world of social media and they see people showing their highlight reels to people, be like, "Oh, I could start a podcast. Oh, I could write a book," and then they get inside and they realize, "Oh, darn, this is harder than I expected. I should have just stayed at home eating cheese and popcorn." Like, so what helped you to stay committed to fulfilling your goals and publishing the magical book of Aladdin Carpets?
Well, I think commitment ties to focus. So I don't think you can get committed unless you get focused, and you have to determine where you want to place your focus. And once you that it has been determined, then the commitment comes. And so, you get laser focus, and then the whole aspect of the commitment becomes actionable steps. And they don't have everyone thinks it has to be these massive leaps. Um, in terms of that step and the magnitude of that step, and they fail to understand it can actually be very small steps leading to something bigger. But the steps you have to take and the action you have to take and the focus you have to get to be able to say that you are on a committed path. So I don't think those two are very much related. And sometimes when we jump into this larger world of social media, it's very easy to get distracted, and those distractions cost. They cost you in terms of how many steps you take and how far you go. So the laser focus is where you really need to be, even in social media. I think the interesting thing is I had not been on social media prior. The only social media presence I had was LinkedIn, and I kept that for because it was a professional aspect of staying in touch with colleagues and career oriented individuals, that I was on LinkedIn. But even then, I wasn't active on LinkedIn. So when I came into social media, it was brand new. It was a learning curve. It was a massive learning curve. And I had to do that learning curve quickly. And so I was able to do that. And that was a leap of itself. But the key thing that I found out in doing that is about not getting distracted. You know, there's people that go on Instagram, flip, 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 scroll up, scroll up, scroll up. Those are distractions, right? You've got to stay focused on what you are trying to accomplish. And you have to have a clarity about what you're trying to accomplish. So there's a number of things that have to come together to be able to drive a committed path, if that makes sense. Hopefully that does.
Oh yeah, it makes so much sense because it's so darn true. It's really gotta definitely gotta be focused too. And heck, even I think actually listening to a podcast, I think it was yesterday, on Value Team about Cal Newport, the author wrote deep work, and he mentions how he doesn't have any social media at all. The closest thing to social media would be just him using really just YouTube, and it's all because he wants to stay focused, and his line of work, like deep thinking, is required, and social media is built to really steal your focus and make sure your attention is all on that instead of what you're supposed to be doing. So it makes perfect sense.
Absolutely. And it's just interesting too. And I think it's about also scoping your personal. I use the word scoping, which we typically hear in a business environment, but it's very relevant for our own personal lives. Is just to put boundaries and scope our personal space. So one of the things that I had done years back was I cut off all cable, and I did not have cable. And I remember when I was cutting off cable, people thought I was nuts, but I never really liked, um, television. I love movies and theater and things and the arts, but television in terms of show, wasn't really something that I enjoyed. And I also didn't like the way the news was going, because no more were we seeing shows of debate, but we were being pushed information. And that wasn't something I received very well, because I love to reflect, I love to read, I love to um, ponder things. And the new television, or the way information was being pushed to us, was not necessarily giving us that capability. So I shut off the cable years, I mean, double digit years. And that allowed me, one of the things that allowed me to do, it no longer defined how I thought. It no longer defined how my day was going to go. So I could get up and my optimism was higher, my gratitude was higher, my day to day outcomes were better. And so I never missed it. And so it was able to really focus me in. And I think few people truly understand how creating those boundaries and ensuring positive messages come in. That was the other thing too. There was a lot of negativity in the information that we were being pushed. So to be able to manage your positive space and your personal space is a huge factor in that. And staying focused and staying committed to what you need to do for yourself.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And it's good you really got rid of cable. Bet your bank account was happy about that too. It's like, I got these 4 miles to feed. Like, man, forget this cable. I need to focus here.
For sure, right? Especially what cable costs is these days. I have no idea now, because, as I said, it's been well over 10 years I stopped having that type of thing. Now, everybody with the Wi-Fi and all of these different technologies, what's wonderful is you can do things on demand. So you can go out and source what you would like to get information on, which I can relate to the gentleman you mentioned in terms of him being on YouTube and going out demanding what he wants to explore. And that to me is much more conducive to one, keeping the frame of how you think of things at a higher level, right? So enhancing your ability to look at things in a much bigger way, in a much more, don't take this the wrong way, but like, more in applying your intellect and being able to surmise things from the facts that you're seeing or the information you're seeing. Um, there's a whole different perspective to that than sitting in front of a cable television and being delivered how you should think and being told how you should think. So, to what degree, especially as we get older, we want to keep our gray cells alert, um, and exercised in the same way we would exercise our physical body. It's important to reframe how you get information, how you assess information, and then what you do with that information.
Ah, yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. The do part's especially important because, funny enough, I forgot. I forgot who it was. I think it was somebody referred to the TV as the boob tube. And just thinking back to that archaic definition, it's like, oh, yeah, I feel like the classic booby trap. Get somebody who's stupid, like, yeah, put in front of that TV, let it program their mind, that television programming. And it's like they won't do nothing with the information besides being entertained. But you yourself, you're like, nah, forget that. I ain't going for no boob tube. I ain't going for no television programming. I'm gonna program myself for what I decide to do. And that leads me to the wonderful question about what you do, because in your book you mentioned that having a intimate self relationship is definitely more substantial than becoming self aware. So for those who haven't gotten to that part of the book yet and want a little more expounding on that Mind filling us in on what's that all about? The intimate self relationship.
Well, and this again is from my backstory in terms of just dealing with a lot of things from a young age. And I questioned so many things. I pondered on faith. I pondered on the concept of, what or who is this God that is, that loves you so much. And yet you were surrounded with, there was, at least I was, with pain. And and this sense of worthlessness coming from people who should have been my role models and who should have loved me unconditionally. So I started to really ponder a lot of things. And it's only later, in later years, I really came to realize it was a blessing, those early beatdowns, I call them. But what it fostered in me was to become very self aware, to become very connected with myself, and to rewrite some of my narratives to and land on being loving who I saw in the mirror and really appreciating the good person that was looking back at me, or and the person that was looking back at me. And what that the book talks about is just the importance of self-love, um, forming that intimate relationship with yourself. Because I grew up where I had a grandmother that didn't like dark skin, people of color. So, and I was dark skinned, my sister was lighter skinned, and there was definitely a divide in how each of us were treated as a result of those differences. And then I had a father that was, or a dad that was, promiscuous, loved the ladies, was abusive. And as a child, I looked like my dad. So many times people would say things flippantly like, "Oh, you're like your dad," not realizing to a child's ears, seeing someone they couldn't really fully respect and appreciate as as that father figure, or maternal figure. To hear that you're like them isn't taken necessarily the way the adults saying it or the people saying it meant it to be taken. A child looks at the practical side of that language and goes, "I'm not like him," you know, and you're trying to figure those types of identity things out. And so being self-aware and loving yourself and starting to be able to know yourself intimately. And intimate is not typically a word used with your oneself. It's a word used to connect with others, but not just necessarily with yourself. But I find it such a phenomenal and important word to use with oneself. To say you understand yourself intimately, what it did was give me the freedom and really elevated me to where when somebody says something like that or tries to tell you who you are or what you can and cannot do, that intimate self relationship allowed me to be able to strongly state whether they were wrong or whether they were right. And if they were wrong, to be able to then affirm who I was and what I stood for and what I believed in, and how very different, and to be able to articulate how very different I was from, say, my dad. And that's what an intimate self relationship with yourself empowers you to do. It empowers you to tell and show people who you are, empowers you to give them the language and the words to define you and to state who and what you are. And so it was a very powerful stance. And so I talk about it in the book because I truly believe it's a position that many that are oppressed by the impressions of others as to who they are can empower themselves to deny it and to restate it and to retell their stories. And so that's what's in the book.
Some good stuff indeed, especially overcoming that colorism that still goes on to this day, sadly. And it's really such a shame. It's like, oh, you're the darker one. It's like, all right, we're gonna treat you worse. Like, oh, we got that lighter skin. Oh, yeah, we got a place for you right here. That's right. And then the light skinned ones, they go at war with the dark skinned ones, especially growing up, especially the girls got to go because it's like, oh, why you got to get all the boys, huh? Like, and it's just really such a shame that really like skin color is still a big thing nowadays when it really shouldn't be. Because at the end of the day, we're definitely all human. Like we all still bleed red here. We still all have value and we still have souls within these clay vehicles here known as our bodies. So it's definitely such a shame. But hey, sounds like you're able to turn that pain into power.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that is really what self-love is able to do is to give you that and to truly understand yourself, right? Like to truly spend time reflecting on who you are and what you stand for, um, what your morals, values, what you believe in, what you will do, what you will not do. Yes, it is definitely empowerment.
Oh yeah, that's right. That empowerment indeed. That empowerment indeed. So speaking of going through a rough childhood, what do you think out of all of them? What do you think is the one major setback in your life that you had thus far that actually led to a new level of advancement for you? Besides the pandemic, of course. I'm trying to get rid of that excuse. Like we all could use that excuse, but there's probably something else that happened before that led to where you currently are today.
Well, I think it's really figuring out your purpose and what is that. I ran a management consulting firm, and of course going across different industry, different clients, running different teams, running projects, supporting projects and delivery and transformation. So I dealt with a lot of team based type scenarios in which I worked to deliver what the client needed, but I also worked to advance the team members themselves. And one of the things that I had come to is I was actually an atypical manager or leader because I truly wanted everyone to be embraced, to be heard, to be seen, and to be elevated at the end of a project. And I did that. But at the same time, over a period of time, I myself was not growing. I was growing others, I was inspiring others, but I was not no longer growing myself. And that for me was a pivotal point of realization. And I remember coming from one of my clients on the highway driving, and I had this kind of epiphany where it's like, you are capable of so much more. You have so much more to give. Is this where you really want to end up? Meaning, just kind of helping everyone but not really elevating yourself. And that allowed me to stop for a moment and think, how do I elevate myself? How do I grow? What more do I have to offer? And that really led to me going through this rediscovery of what my true natural talents with, which I surmise as writing, speaking, and influencing. And to utilize those three things in a way to influence changed perspectives, break down the preconceptions, and create a changed perspective. And that can hit any aspect of us living our lives. On top of that, I had then looked at how life was because as I was getting older, I thought, you start to think of people are passing away. I'm getting to that age where some people I grew up with are passing away at very young ages. I lost one that was 60, which I consider to be very young. And they're starting to pass away, and makes you think of life differently. And the way I look at life is what breadcrumbs are you leaving in your path as you live your life? What breadcrumbs are you leaving that if you were to leave this life, they have people that you touched have something to pick up and say, this is the essence of who that person was. and they have amazing memories, and you've touched them in such a way that you've somehow, connected to their spirit, you've changed them in some way, and it's reflected on with affection and adoration. What are the breadcrumbs that we all want to leave? And I got into this really deep reflection of all of that. And that's when I made the pivot, and a drastic pivot, to change where I was going, to change and take a chance on me in a much bigger way than I had done over the prior years, because what I was doing I could do with my eyes closed. There was no more challenge in doing it. I knew how to do it. I could go in, I could, problem solve, I could consult, I can transform, businesses and systems. But what was I leaving behind? What were those breadcrumbs I was leaving? And that was a pivot. So hopefully that answers your question in terms of, what were some of those key points that made me think to change and to walk away from a somewhat lucrative career to restart, to truly restart.
Yes, indeed. So, a couple powerful things right there, especially the question that we all should ask ourselves is what breadcrumbs are we leaving behind, and making sure that the folks grab them, especially the humans. Don't want the animals to grab them, because then you'll be like, oh man, I'm lost. And then you meet the big bad wolf, and it's like, well, game over. You're gonna have to go to the next life. And then the other piece is the fact that you considered 60 very young. And I appreciate that as a millennial, because I'm tired of being around folks in their 20s and 30s saying that they're old, and they know very darn well they are far from old. So definitely appreciate you
Oh
saying
my
that,
goodness.
D.
No, no, no. Oh my goodness. What would they be thinking saying that? The best is yet to come for sure. But 20 in your 20s is definitely not old.
Yeah, if only drop kicking some of them will be legal. Yeah, I need to get your
That
head right. I might have to give you a lobotomy for that one. Yeah, I need to
I'm
get your
coming with the
mind right.
tool.
Yep. I have to stick some cucumbers up their nose as far as they can go until they finally get their mind right. Like, all right, so who's old now? All right, I'm young and money. All right, cool. Cool. Glad to see things the way they should be. Now we got this $997 product that you need to invest in. Like, I'm not investing. You want to give, okay, I'll buy the product. I'll slide the card. All right, good, good, good. Yeah. Oh, stop.
Oh my
Oh,
goodness.
yeah. Yeah, don't worry. There's trap doors full of corn and random exaggerations everywhere. But hey, this is some solid stuff right here. Some solid gold flow stuff right here. So since this is far from your first rodeo, is there a question that you wish you'd be asked more often when you're on the guest side of the game on these podcasts?
If there's a question that I would like asked, uh,
Yeah.
I think it's more what how do you serve, right? How how do you serve, and what do you want for yourself? It's like you're going to leave. Like so from my perspective, there's two things that is completely out of our control. Coming into this world and leaving this world is outside of our control. We cannot control that. And what we can control is everything in between. And it starts at a point when you can control that, because all your younger years, you're really still in a very dependent state, right? So life is about getting to an independent state. And then it's about making choices and controlling the in between before you get to the next endpoint that you cannot control, which is to leave. And the question that I would love to be always put on the table is, what do you want that space to look like? What do you want that space to be for you? And are you currently living what you want that space to be for you? Are you living that right now? And if you aren't, why aren't you? Because at the end of the day, life is too short. It really does go by very quickly, and it is too short. So we have to maximize that living. We have to live it fully. We have to live it responsibly. We have to use gratitude to serve back. So the benefits that we get, the accolades, the abundance that we get from that life, no matter what abundance looks like, because for each of us, abundance could be very different, right? But even in that abundance, whether it's a humble abundance, extravagant abundance, whatever that abundance is, then you've got the reciprocity and the giving back to serve. And if that isn't the momentum of your life right now, why not? And what changes can be made to get you on the path that you really want? The one thing that would saddens me is if people are just going through a routine. They're having little happy moments, but their happiness can't be sustained. So they smile. So, like, I'm laughing with you now. And then the broadcast ends and I'm unhappy. That shouldn't be, right? That was just a happy moment. Is your happiness sustained that when the broadcast ends, you actually are still remain in a happy state? Are you, and all the things that creates that happy state are the serving, is the living purpose driven exponentially. All of these things matter. So COVID was an amazing time, and we're still in it, so I don't want it to act like it's over. But COVID was great because it allowed the world to stop for a moment and reflect on what they were doing. And some of that came out to a realization they actually weren't living a life that they necessarily wanted to live. So that to me was one of the best things coming out of COVID, is to stop us for a moment in the pace that we were going at and to just reflect on, what are you doing? What do you miss? Oh, I don't miss actually getting up in the morning and going to work. Or, oh, I miss that. And for some people they missed it. That's fair. We're all different. But to know what it is that sparks you, COVID helped to give us that kind of insight to ourselves. And so I will always be grateful for COVID from that perspective. I won't be grateful for it for those lost, for the souls that were lost to it, right? But from the perspective of stopping our pace for just enough time to us to figure some things out. During that period, people that had said to me, I'm going to retire in 5 years or 6 years, retired, right? They actually retired earlier. So that tells you there's a phenomenal amount of people in this world that are just going through a daily routine without really stopping at times to reflect on whether that routine is really in their heart, or it's just getting by, or it's just because. So I question how many of us are living the life we truly wish to live. And that's the question I would say hopefully gets put on the table.
That's right, like a big old turkey on Thanksgiving, indeed, on the magical table. How are you serving? That's right, indeed. That's right. How you serving, indeed. Definitely, definitely, indeed. Because definitely need to really ask that question for ourselves. Like, oh, how are we serving the world? Because the world needs our wonderful natural gifts, and making sure that we actually are doing things that bring us joy, and heck, even the new 51st state known as the state of happy, aka happiness. That's right. How can we stay in that state right there? And that's the one
Mhm.
state that covers all the states, if not the globe, if we choose to find it, depending on where you are on this magical globe, and making sure you at least have a good slice of it every day as much as possible, depending on the situation. Yeah, that's right. Could even call it a slice of apple pie. Yeah, or maybe sweet potato. That's
Did
right.
you get to the point in the book that talked about G squared to the power of two attitude, G squared attitude?
Oh, not yet, but please enlighten us.
Yeah, so in the book, there's a concept of G squared attitude, G to the power of two, as well as another way of saying it. And what that is talks about is also, we talk about one aspect of our life to serve, and the other aspect is also to live in gratitude. And that whole aspect of gratitude, because you can spend a lot of your time and effort on negative emotions, or you can spend that effort on positive emotions, of which gratitude is one of them. And to be grateful for everything um, in your life, good, bad, and the ugly. And a part of that, once you live in with gratitude, once you're going after your purpose, and once you are serving, using that purpose to serve others in some way, then you exude a certain grace. And the best way I use to think of grace is I use figureheads like Mother Teresa, like um, Gandhi, like Nelson Mandela. They all, the Dalai Lama. They carry themselves in a way that is so graceful, despite the they all had ups and downs in their lives, but still they arrived at a place of grace. And I believe that's one of the fundamental reasons for that, is because they lived with gratitude and they were grateful for the ups, they were grateful for the downs to learn from, and their thinking and their philosophies and their outcomes came from the reflection of all of that, to be powerful, powerful leaders and powerful, purveyors of thought in our society. So all of this that comes out from what I call G to the power of two attitude. Carry yourself with grace, and within that comes gratitude. So the two G's is the G to the power of two.
That's right. That's the real G Shock watch we need, folks. That's right. The G squared, baby. That's right. That's right. Indeed. That gratitude, indeed. Yes, indeed. That gratitude, indeed. Yep, and that's actually been really been spread around a lot on the planet Earth because it's so darn sure we all need it on the daily, whether it's at night, middle of the day, or heck, even when you first wake up, we all need that gratitude. Just be grateful for what we have, no matter how big or how small, because could have none at all.
Absolutely.
Yes, indeed.
And you find if you go through the exercises of actually documenting your gratitude and the things that you're grateful for, you'll find that over time there's more to be grateful for than not. So usually the gratitude side ends up being way bigger than those things that you would normally consider pain points or struggles or whatever. So we have so much to be grateful for. We don't always stop to reflect on that.
Yes, indeed. That's right. Definitely got to stop every now and then. Put the brakes on. Put the brakes on. Indeed. Just stop. Take in the atmosphere, the nature. Go barefoot every once in a while. Take in that nature. Be grateful for the grass. Heck, even the sand if you had a sandy beach. That's right. Take in that fresh air. Maybe that fresh country air, maybe depending where you are. That's right. That's right. That G squared action. Indeed. Yes, indeed. So we're coming down to the magical question that every guest gets to receive, and that is if you're to wake up tomorrow and you were 25 again, but this time in the current year of 2021 with all of your knowledge and experience, what advice would you give to yourself?
Go after my purpose. I would not, I wouldn't, oh my goodness, go after you. It would be the same message. Lead a purpose driven life. I can honestly say that I had discovered my talent in high school, and leaving high school, I somehow got diverted from it because I followed the traditional path of, you got to go to school, you got to do this, then you get a job, then you get married, then you have, this whole very societally traditional pathway. And sometimes that's not for everybody. So I would absolutely be a much more bigger force in terms of advocating and for purpose driven direction for, especially for the youth and young adults. I would definitely be guiding them to, first, what is your purpose? Go after it and tie everything else together after that. because tradition is not necessarily where you should be.
Ah, yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Find your purpose and go after it. That's right. Chase it down like it's Bugs Bunny and you're Elmer Fudd. That's right. Chase that passion down. Indeed. That's right. Don't worry about tradition. Tradition is not always truth. Indeed. Yes, indeed. Sometimes you have to break out that box they try to put us in, or heck, even that trapezoid. Like break out of something. Make sure that you,
Exactly.
yeah, that's right. That's right. Just break out of it. Break out the norm. The norm became the norm because folks been doing it for too long, dang it. Too long. That's right. Longer than all the wiener dogs, probably too long. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So, for those who want more of what the wonderful Jenn has to offer with her fabulous podcast show, and buy all the copies of your fabulous book and keep up with all that you're doing, heck, even possibly your follow up books in the future, what's the best way for folks to reach out to you and keep up with what you're doing?
You can find me on my podcast at my podcast page, Arrays of Living. Just look up Arrays of Living podcast. It's on Lipsing, as well as I'm on LinkedIn. I am on Facebook and I'm on Instagram. So you can find me there. And, new book is being developed that will focus around relationships, and how to apply some of these things in related to relationships. But that is where you can find me on LinkedIn. And I actually have not. I'm in the midst of developing my website, which will soon be launched. I took my time with that. Because I felt it was important enough. But those are the platforms where you can find me: Instagram, Jenn Drakes, as well as Arrays of Living, and also on Facebook and LinkedIn.
Woohoo! Well, there you have it, folks. Reach out to the wonderful Jenn herself, the joyful Jenn herself. Be on the lookout for the book on relationships, indeed. And I can even grab a bunch of copies of this book itself, Aladdin's Carpets, indeed. And you too will
That's
be able
on
to find.
Amazon. The Aladdin Carpets is on Amazon in ebook and paperback, and the audiobook will be coming out shortly. And that will be, and then I will announce that on LinkedIn and the different platforms once that is been released, and that will then be followed um, by the paperback, by the hardcover book. So lots going on, new things coming out. My Arrays of Living podcast also has a series called Connect to Thrive, and it's some early morning show all about everything sex, love, and relationships. And then we are planning a special broadcast that will come out about people innovation and how to innovate both employees and people and get them, because innovation is something that's always kind of related to things and technology. And my platform is that people themselves can be innovated. And how do you do that? So a lot of things are going on. So thank you for that, Dom, for the opportunity to speak to that.
My pleasure, D. It's an audiobook coming out soon. Are you reading it yourself?
I am indeed.
Woohoo! There we go. Yes, indeed. You can take Jen on the run or the walk or on the road, baby. That's right. More ways than one. Check out that AOL she got, folks. That's right. Not American Online, but that Arrays of Living, folks. That's right. The Arrays of Living. That AOL goodness indeed. And be on the lookout for the audiobook. Who knows? It might even be out by the time this comes out live indeed. So any parting words before we close up shop, Jen?
I just love to thank you, Dom, for the honor of having me. It's been a pleasure. It truly is an honor, and I'm appreciative of that. And thank you.
How's it going, my friend? I'm glad you made it to the end. That shows that you really enjoyed what you heard and you are an uncommon finisher. Thanks for giving this show a listen. If you really want to help out the show, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with someone that you care about or someone that needs to hear this message because we want to spread this podcast around like butter on bread if that's your type of thing. And if it's not your type of thing, still spread it around anyway because good stuff needs to be shared with good people like yourself.